with a wonderful guest, Troy Marden. Troy, you are one of the wonderful Southern gardeners from Nashville, Tennessee, and we can't wait to hear all about you. Troy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, Troy, and this is Rich Christakis, and I want to thank you for coming on, and it's an honor to have you here. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, a little about myself. Well, I'm actually a Midwestern boy, a Great Plains boy. Originally, I grew up in a tiny little town in north central Kansas, but I've lived here in Nashville 22 years almost. So I'm sort of adopted Southern, but I
You
love the climate
are.
here.
You are, and you give the best tips ever. Now, you're on a television show there in Nashville, correct?
I am for I guess 12 or 13 years now. I have been one of the co-hosts on a show called Volunteer Gardener, and everybody says why Volunteer Gardener, and it's because Tennessee is the volunteer
Yep.
state.
There you go. We want you to give us some spring gardening tips. Do you have some
Yeah.
ideas that you can share with the viewers?
Well, if you're like me, I was so busy in the fall that I didn't get all of my fall cleanup done. So I still have a little bit of cleanup to do. But I'm actually kind of glad after last week that I didn't get it all done. I still had some leaves down on the ground protecting things when it dropped from 64 on Sunday to 4 on Wednesday.
Oh, oh.
And
Wow.
yeah, it was just cold here, maybe colder. I think Shauna and I chatted back and forth a little bit on Facebook or somewhere, and she said it was colder here than it was there.
Exactly.
Wow.
So I was happy to have some protection down still, and I noticed when I went out this morning that some of the hellebores and things are showing some signs of some freeze damage.
Mm.
So um, we'll see what happens when I do uncover things. So I still have some spring cleanup to do, which means getting in and getting the leaves out of the beds and doing some pruning. And after last week's cold snap, I'll have probably more pruning to do. And just getting a fresh coat of mulch down on everything. And I try to do that really early so that when the things do begin coming up in the spring, that they're pushing up through nice, clean mulch and everything looks neat and tidy.
Hey, do you have any tips for any of the listeners and viewers who might be a zone pusher on how to do some extra protection to make sure that you've got a better chance? No guarantees if you're a zone pusher, of course, but what are your tips to help with that?
Well, I tell you, I've got a couple of things. First of all, a heavy coat of mulch if you're on the borderline with some of your plants, a little heavier mulch around them in the wintertime. And I say gardeners a little further north are actually kind of lucky because as I alluded to a minute ago, one of the problems we have here is that we get so much freeze and thaw. Our
Yeah.
ground doesn't, we don't cool down and the ground freezes and it stays that way. And even for plants that aren't quite as hardy, that's better than freeze and thaw and freeze and thaw
Hmm.
because that starts breaking roots
It's a
and
hardening off
uh,
process.
hardening off. The other trick that I have learned over the years, I have a garden shed that is not heated. And if it gets really, really cold, like the other night when it got down into the single digits, I went out and I put a tiny little space heater in it just overnight to keep it from freezing too hard. But I have actually learned to dig small pieces of things that I really want to make sure overwinter. I just basically heal them in and put them in a pot, fill them with a potting mix of some kind, and put them straight into the garden shed late in the fall, usually after a frost. And I have been really successful overwintering, a chunk of a banana that might not be quite
Ah,
It's a
hardy, or a
backup
chunk of a
plan.
banana.
Yeah.
that's a
Uh,
great
That's
idea.
a
And if
great
you're a
idea.
northern gardener, you could do this, you could put it in your basement.
Yeah.
you
You
can put it in
know,
your basement. You can put it in your crawl space.
Hmm.
As long as it doesn't freeze. And my garden shed will get down to 35, 36, 37, but it doesn't freeze hard. I overwinter agapanthus that way here. I overwinter a lot of my more tender cannas, bananas. And that way, if the one in the garden lives over, I still have a great big chunk out there growing the next year. If the one in the garden doesn't live over, then I have a baby to get going in the spring and put back out.
We're going to have to wrap it up, but before we go, we want to
Sure.
thank you for coming on. And if you could tell the listeners and viewers what your website where people can maybe view your show, and then the books you've written, where they can possibly buy them online.
Well, of course, you can find the books at Amazon. And again, the first one was called Plant This Instead. The second one is called The Southern Gardener's Handbook. Our television show is Volunteer Gardener, which you can find at volunteergardener.org. And you can also find us on YouTube. If you search Volunteer Gardener, we have our own YouTube channel, so you can find us there.
Awesome. I'm going to look you up and I'm going to watch you in all my spare moments.
All right.
All right. Thanks
So good
again,
to talk to
Troy.
you guys.
Oh, thanks so much. And you
Thank
have
you.
a great spring.
All right.
Okay.
Take care.
We'll be back with our next segment in just a few moments.
Spring is upon us, and Alsop Home and Nursery is hosting their Flower and Garden Show on March 14th and 15th. We are blooming with excitement to showcase the best of the best for the upcoming planting season. Visit us at our St. John, Indiana or Frankfort, Illinois locations. Stores open at 8 a.m. and seminars begin at 10 a.m. For an entire schedule of events, see our website, alsopnursery.com. Don't miss the Flower and Garden Show on March 14th and 15th.